Hello and welcome to this week's Armonia video, hosted by myself, Keith Williams, the President of Armonia Seminary. Sadly, Alethea won't be joining us this week. We couldn't arrange time to sit down and record something. However, this does offer us one advantage. I am free to rant about a topic of my choice. And the topic of choice I'm going to rant about is one close to my heart, martial arts. But why a rant, you might be asking? Well, there's a question I see at least once a year posted somewhere in the Jedi community, and I saw it posted several times in the last few weeks. And that question is a loaded question. What is the best martial art for a Jedi to practice? This, of course, is loaded in two ways. It assumes that Jedi should practice a martial art, and it assumes that there is a best one to be practiced. I'd like to start by talking about where the word martial comes from. It of course comes from the god Mars, the god of war. And it refers specifically to things to do with the military, with combat, with violence. And thus anything martial is to do with inflicting violence upon our fellow man. Art, on the other hand, is a creative process. It is about expressionism. But it can also refer to particular skills required to create art. So one is a sculptor, one can be a painter, one can be a musician. Your art is a skill set as much as just an expression of your creativity. When those two worlds meet, that is where we get martial arts, where we get a personal journey of developing fighting skills, of developing a mindset to both resolve conflicts and prevent conflicts. That is a martial art. It is both scientific in that it relies on proven methods, but it is also an expression of individuality. We all take an individual approach to combatives. The creators of martial arts have all taken a different approach to the creation of their system, and so on and so forth. That is why there is such a variety of martial arts, because martial arts are as much about violence and effective combat skills as they are about people being individuals. So what does this mean in the context of Jedi practicing martial arts? Simply put, there is no best martial art. The reason everyone throughout life has chosen different arts is because everyone chooses arts for different reasons. What should be our part of our motivation as Jedi to practice a martial art? Personally, we believe in defending and protecting others. And if we have not studied the arts of preventing and resolving conflict, which martial arts are, we become bystanders when we observe violence occurring. We become bystanders when we see events which could become violent, that could escalate into violence. And so it's important for a Jedi to practice martial art because it prevents us becoming powerless in situations where we believe we should be powerful. With that said, that is of course my reasoning. That is part of why I believe my practice of martial arts is important to my approach to being a Jedi. There are as many reasons people can argue a Jedi shouldn't have to practice a martial art, as there are reasons we can argue people should, as Jedi, practice a martial art. However, I'm going to work forward from that logic. It would be bad debate practice to assume it is true a Jedi should practice martial arts at this point to continue the debate. However, I'm just talking and answering this question as I intend to answer it. And unless I assume there is a reason for Jedi practicing martial arts, that Jedi should practice martial arts, I can't answer the question, what is the best martial art for a Jedi? So a free lesson there. In real debate practice and essay writing, you should never build an argument based upon an assumption, only deduction, and evidence-based reasoning. However, let's explore the question, best martial art for a Jedi. I often see bandied about the answer Aikido, and those who practice martial arts will understand why there's an element of skepticism in my voice there. Now, before I become critical, first I want to extol why I believe people argue Aikido is the best martial art for Jedi practice. Aikido is of course based around the concept of Aki. Aki of course, refers to the priorities in that situation. Ki is, of course, energy, it is breath, it is the expression of energy. I refers to the opposite, the void, something that is filled. So the concept of Kido is built around the basic concept of Aki, that the practitioner of Aikido absorbs, accepts the energy, reacts appropriately. Hence the notion that Aikido relies upon using an opponent's strength against them. No, it is about neutralising the opponent's strength and then using your own expression of energy, your own strength to overcome them. This can be seen in many of the throws, if anyone has ever watched a demo, where a grab is attempt and the Aikidoka receiving the attack retreats or surrenders their posture to put the attacker in a poor posture, and then they complete the throw. So Aikido, in many respects, fulfills two objectives important to a Jedi. We use our powers to defend and to protect, never to attack, and thus this notion of a defensive art, something which reacts, is very appealing to that strategy, to that notion that we never engage in aggression. We are respondents to aggression. And in that sense, Aikido fulfills that philosophical point for Jedi. The other is that we recognise that an aggressor can be of any size and have any strength, advantage, speed advantage, so on and so forth, over us. And so Aikido, with its notion of technique overcoming strength, is very appealing from a self-defense perspective, in the notion that we should be able to use the techniques of Aikido to overcome any potential aggressor. Lastly, Aikido is about self-development. Ueshiba O-sensei was a deeply devout practitioner of Tomo Shinto, and this was reflected in his martial arts approach and the Aikido that he created after the Second World War. In many ways, you cannot divide Aikido from spirituality, in the sense that you cannot divide Katori Shinto Ryu from Shinto. You cannot divide the Shaolin arts from Buddhism. You cannot divorce Gakta from Sikhism. And this is the other aspect I believe appeals to Jedi. It is a martial art which is about self-improvement through training, through knowledge, something we as Jedi value. And thus Aikido has many of the values of Jediism integral to it, and that is why I believe it appeals to Jedi. Now, I just gave some great arguments personally as to why Aikido is the perfect martial art for a Jedi. It fulfills all of our philosophical goals. Yet, we're not about philosophy at the end of the day, are we? We're not really. We're about going out there and helping people. And there's something tragic about Aikido. It's never worked in a ring. It's never worked in a cage. And it's not used as the primary art or discipline, our core set of skills, in most of the reality-based self-defense systems around the world or combatives practiced by militaries. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Lefway, Muay Thai all have a lot more, let us say, currency in the world of self-defense and fighting. And if we are about helping people and preventing people from suffering violence, we need something that can deliver. Aikido is not really considered able to deliver. So why would we practice something which ties our hands? Why shouldn't we practice something that police forces, martial arts instructors in militaries and security forces think does the trick? Why should we do Aikido over, let us say, Gracie combatives or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Why should we do Aikido over, say, something like Muay Thai? Things we know work. And that's the thing, you can now turn around and say, well, but those are combat sports, they work one-on-one, they work only in cages and so forth. The thing is, guys, if it works in a combat sport, it's going to work anywhere in the world. If it can put someone down in a cage, in a ring, it'll put someone down on the street. The technique, if it works against a resisting person in one environment, it'll work against another. That's an asinine argument. What you need to be querying is strategy and tactics. Yes, there are tactics you would use in a cage which you would never dream of using in a street confrontation, such as a single leg takedown. You wouldn't focus all of your attention on a single target if you've got potentially 3 people trying to kick your head in. But that's not the point. Something which trains you to deal with being punched in the face, and trains you to deal with being kicked by someone who can kick with the force of a small car collision, is going to prepare you a lot more than dancing around in Japanese sweatpants. That's what they are. That is what a gi is. I'm saying that as a karateka and someone with a deep love of Japanese martial arts. We are wearing the gi, the keiko gi, is Japanese sweatsuit. Deal with it. And this is what I'm going to say. Learning how to take a hit, learning how to hit, learning how to put someone on the floor and submit them will teach you a lot more. Just doing that in one session will teach you a lot more than, frankly, session after session of dancing around and throwing someone who is complying with your throw and is not truly attacking you in an attempt to hurt. The best martial art for a Jedi is nothing to do with style, it is to do with aliveness. You need to practice something which will prepare you for real violence. Most systems of Aikido do not practice in a way which will teach you to deal with violence. Most martial arts out there will not teach you to deal with violence. Full contact karate will teach you how to get kicked, how to get punched, how to kick and punch someone, and to be honest, it will prepare you for a bar brawl very well. However, this is where we're getting to questions about skill. How do we defend ourselves? How do we restrain someone in a way which doesn't require us to hurt them? And so on and so forth. There are a lot of technical questions you have to then ask about what it means to practice a martial art as a Jedi. If I am trying to help someone who is being attacked, I have to be able to navigate around that person, take that person off, restrain them. If I have someone who's broken into a house, wants to leave, and I need to restrain them to perform a scissors and arrest or so forth, I have to know how to restrain that person, and so on and so forth. That's what you have to look at when you are approaching martial arts practice. You have to look at what is around you, you have to look at your resources, and you have to ask, what might I encounter as a Jedi in my everyday life which could be used to defend myself and others? Now, I'd kind of want to approach the different sort of martial arts that are out there to maybe help you gain an idea of how to seek out a martial art to practice. Because martial arts cover a really broad spectrum of activities. I've mentioned combatives, martial arts and hand-to-hand skills practiced in armies. Now, combatives have a very specific goal. It's soldier versus soldier. Combatives have concerns civilians don't have. Combatives concerns itself with the fact that the attacker or aggressor is likely to be armed. It can include things such as bayonet fighting, knife fighting. It can include killing someone without that person recognising they are being attacked. You won't find that in civilian self-defence. You'll find it in military combatives, coming up behind someone, and the best way to restrain them was to stab them in the back to kill them. You won't find that in civilian self-defence, or I hope you won't. Never know, there's some unscrupulous people out there. If we then look at reality-based self-defence systems, there's differences there for civilians and police officers, and the whole spectrum of people who might use such skills in a civilian setting. So, for example, a civilian practicing reality-based self-defence wants to learn how to escape an altercation, how to defend themselves against a surprise attack, and so on and so forth. Whereas a police officer or security personnel, they want to learn how to safely approach someone who is a suspect, and they have to learn how to restrain someone, not allow their own weapon to be taken off of them, especially police officers in the United States, most who are armed, for example. Then we have combat sports. Combat sports are simulations of combat, boxing, wrestling, and so on and so forth, and the concern there is to beat the guy across the ring, across the mat, across the cage, at the same game. You then have cultural traditions, such as karate, taekwondo, Chinese martial arts, which have decades, centuries-long traditions, and in many respects they are no longer about violence, but about preserving important cultural traditions. They're still based on martial arts, they're still based on military arts, but their purpose is now preservation, not evolution, not staying relevant. And so you have these very different spectrums of martial arts, and that's where you have to realise and recognise where you need to go in your personal journey. So there was a conversation in the Force Academy Discord about pistol disarms, for example, and one person made the very astute and correct analysis that in a civilian setting, if someone pulls a pistol on you or a firearm on you, the best thing to do, unless they are threatening your life or something of terrible consequence, is if they just want your wallet, if they just want your phone or something, hand it over and let them walk away with it. There's no reason to get shot. The person he was talking to had a military background, and the reason they were practicing pistol disarms is because in the field, in the situation they could encounter someone with a firearm, they don't have the choice of giving up their wallet. It is a life or death situation. That pistol disarm is the last line of defence. And again, that contextualises things. That was a soldier who was a Jedi, so he needed to practice combatives. Most Jedi are civilians. There's no reason for us to practice combatives. But there's going to be Jedi who their hobbies are combat sports, and they don't necessarily ingrain certain self-defense tactics. And so, depending on your personal journey, you are all over the spectrum. What you do with your martial arts and their practicality and so forth depends on where you are in life and what you do with your life. If you work in a situation where you can encounter violent people, you will have to develop practical skills. If you are like most people, a civilian, and you've had your major fight of your life already in high school, which is average for most people in the Western world, do you really need to learn pragmatic self-defense skills? Especially if you're not seeing violence on a regular basis. You're not even being called to resolve conflict as a Jedi in that situation. So is there a point in you learning these life or death skills? That's a question for you. That's not a question for me to answer. We're just exploring the journey. So where does this leave us on the question, what is the best martial art for a Jedi to practice? Frankly, best is relative. You have to ask your questions, what are my self-defense needs? What do I encounter on a regular basis? And what is going to fulfill those needs? If you're encountering extreme violence on a regular basis, Aikido is probably not going to do the job. You should probably talk to other people in the job or the environment and find out what they study, what they've practiced to deal with it. If you don't encounter regular violence and you just want a useful life skill, I'll be frank, Aikido's perfectly fine. Why not practice something you enjoy, something which is fun? It doesn't have to be your defense art, it can be your physical art. And to be frank, martial arts, whether you ever have to use those skills, will teach you a lot about yourself, lead you to encountering wonderful people, and it's a worthwhile experience to have, even for a few months, even a few years in your life. It might be for you, it might not be for you. Now, is it integral to being a Jedi? You need to find that out for yourself. I would say yes. A Jedi is never a bystander. A Jedi does something. Now, sometimes doing something means we stay out the way and we call the right people to do the job. We don't go rushing into the burning house. Guess what we do? We phone the fire brigade. We phone the fire services. We get the ambulances. And maybe if people come out that burning house, we provide some first aid. We provide some reassurance. Same with violent altercations. We see a fight sparking off. We're not going to jump into there. We're going to call the local authority that can deal with it. The security of the building, the police, and so on and so forth. That's the nature of it. You don't put yourself in danger, but you help in the ways you can. A martial art and having the right skills and in the right context will give you a tool to deal with some terrible things that can happen. But is it worth the investment to add to your tool set? At this junction, I think it's fair to say I've given a very roundabout answer to the question, is there best martial art for Jedi to practice? Best is relative to you. You have to look at your self-defense needs, you have to look at the sort of things you encounter and look at the things that can offer you the skill set you need to tackle that. Should you practice martial arts as a Jedi? Yes and no. You should take a serious look at what you can do in a situation which is violent. And you need to make yourself aware of your limitations. Are you allowing yourself to become powerless in a situation where a Jedi shouldn't be powerless? I hope this has given people food for thought, and I'm going to try and remember how we sign these videos out, and I'm going to go with, may you be transformed through your understanding of the Force.